Hello viewers, welcome to our lecture series on Indian ethos in management, and today we are going to start another very interesting topic of Indian ethos in management, which is organizational development and management, which is called as ODM, organizational development and management. And here we will talk about the total capital approach. This is going to be part 1 of our lectures on this topic of ODM, which focuses on total capital approach. When I say total capital approach, I need to give a brief clarification of it, because normally in accounting and finance we assume that capital means money or whatever digital currency you have in your country. It belongs to that money which you have invested into a business enterprise. But here in Indian ethos in management, capital is a broad term which includes different types of capital. When we use this word that we have different types of capital, some of my friends who are in western countries who are teaching, they say that can capital also be of different types other than money? Also, can you consider anything to be our capital? And of course, in our Indian ethos in management, we have different types of capital. We talk about social capital, we talk about spiritual capital. So it is only Indian ethos in management where we talk about different types of capital, and we look at capital in a broader sense, and there are different colors of capital, different variants of capital. That is something which I am going to present in front of you in this very lecture of mine. So I'll give you a brief discussion on 5 forms of capital as holistic development framework. Then we'll talk about holistic development framework as ODM model. We have a VSP model also, where different vectors are there. ERPS framework for ODM is there. What are these acronyms? That I'm going to explain to you all in this very lecture of mine, and eventually we'll talk about the role of ODM in institution building, the way institutions are being built. So let us start our discussion on the topic of organizational development and management. What is total capital approach? When Adam Smith talked about 4 factors of production in his landmark book or celebrated book on wealth called Wealth of Nations, he talked about the 4 factors of production, which is land, labor, capital, and organization. His definition of capital was, in that very writing, it was confined, or what you can call is restricted to the money only. As I told you that in Wealth of Nations, he talked about the 4 factors of production, namely land, labor, capital, and organization, and that definition of capital there into that discussion, it was restricted to money only. And further, if we look at today's perspective, the way we are heading towards cosmonity, from cybernity to cosmonity. So we have actually left modernity long back. We were traditional, we became modern, we talked about cybernity, and now we are looking towards cosmonity as a new future, as a new term. So the land is no more a significant factor, particularly in knowledge organization. So imagine we have some business formats where you don't require any space, you don't require any office, you don't require any land, any building, any place to operate. Everybody is operating from remote locations. So and in some of the ideas where the service comes to us, there is no physical product, so there is no requirement of storing that. So with the emergence of service oriented economy, with the increasing trend of having service oriented economy, and the new type of organization called knowledge organizations, and knowledge being a product, we talk about knowledge products now. So imagine knowledge is now a product. So what is the use of land? So we need the new Adam Smiths in 21st century. We need to redefine what Adam Smith talked about in his celebrated book Wealth of Nations, where 4 factors of production were there, and land was also given a place. So that need to be redefined, or I can say it need to be customized as per the present day requirement. It need to be changed as per present day's requirement. And imagine the very relevance of Indian ethos in management, that long back, even before Adam Smith, it talked about the holistic capital. It talks about Indian knowledge system. It talks about Gyan Parampara. It talked about the knowledge product. So we need to know, we need to actually give special attention that now the concept of capital has been extended beyond its narrow definition, or what you call as restricted meaning of money only. Gone are the days when we used to call money only as part of capital, because when we ask our learners to define what is capital, they at times come with this definition that capital is a money with which we are earning more money, or capital is the money which is being invested into a business enterprise to earn more money. That is called capital. So now that definition is going to be redrafted because and we are not redrafting it just to show that we wish to redraft or for the sake of redrafting it. Actually, it is a need of the hour to understand. So now we have realized that long-standing belief, the long-standing concept of human capital, the social capital, intellectual capital, spiritual capital, and many other dimensions are there. They have actually emerged and received due attention in the academic literature. If you look at the researches being conducted on the topic of this organizational development and management, we find different types of capital. We talk about the human capital accounting, we talk about the human resources accounting, we talk about the social capital, we talk about intellectual capital, we talk about spiritual capital also. So what are they? That is something which I am going to explain to you all in this very lecture of mine, that what are the different types of capital. And remember, when we include all these forms of capital as part of an integrative framework, we actually arrive at the concept of 5 forms of capital, which are actually well accepted into the academic literature which is available on the subject. So we find 5 different forms of capital, starting from physical capital to human capital. Here when we say physical capital, we talk about the capital in the physical form. We have human capital, we have knowledge, or what you call as intellectual capital, we have social capital and spiritual capital. I will be explaining to you one by one what they are. So based on the existing literature, various form of capital it has been defined. When I say physical capital, it implies infrastructure development as well as a natural capital in the form of what you call as natural resources, biodiversity, and many more. So if you ask me what is physical capital, we can say that whatever infrastructure you have developed over a period of time, your land, your building, that is being counted under the physical capital. Capital in the physical form. Capital in physical form, or what you can call as tangible capital. It is in tangible form. It is there, you can see it, you can feel it, and it is in physical form available with your business enterprise. So natural capital is also in the form of natural resources, biodiversity and all. It is there in the form of natural resources. So whatever natural resources you have, that is also part of physical capital. So we all know that physical capital is actually the tangible one. The second one is human capital. We all know that human capital actually indicates towards the quality of competence of human resources. Do I find my human resources to behave as a capital? Can I consider my human resources as my capital? Are they my capital? Can I consider them to be our asset, or they are actually acting as a liability? So human capital is basically a reflection of indicative of the quality of competence of the human resources, those who are working with our organization. And by strengthening the competencies of your human resources, we can strengthen the human competency chain, which is also known as a human capital value chain. For any nation, it can be applicable for the entire nation, and of course for the business enterprises. It depends on the perspective, the way we are looking at it, whether we are talking about human capital chain from the perspective of a country, a nation, or from the perspective of a business organization. In both the perspectives, we find that if we strengthen the competencies of human resources, we can strengthen the human competency chain. And it is well recognized that India has made significant contribution to world's human capital reserve by the way of its professional manpower and expertise. with all confidence we can say that whatever is happening in Silicon Valley, the people behind that who are working, majority is being contributed, majority of human resources are being contributed by India, they are Indians. So we all understand, we all recognize that our country has made significant contribution to this world's human capital reserve. So our human resources, they are actually acting as capital for different countries, for different organizations. So wherever and what wherever they are, whatever they are doing, that is actually worth emulating, that is actually worth counting. That is why we understand, we call it to be a human capital reserve. And all this is happening because of the strong human resource competencies and institutional structures for the same. Not only their competencies but also the institutional structure. They are finding the proper opportunities, adequate opportunities to work on that. Third one is, after human capital, third one is knowledge capital, which is also called as intellectual capital. Now we are moving from tangible to intangible. Knowledge can be gained, knowledge can be understood, but it can't be seen. You can't touch knowledge. It is intangible. Knowledge can touch you, but you can't touch knowledge. So knowledge capital or intellectual capital is reflected through the new knowledge creation. When I'm having some knowledge about a specific idea, a specific problem or a specific scenario, then with the help of that knowledge we are able to execute, we are able to come out of a situation which is causing a concern for us. So intellectual property creation and development is the hallmark of intellectual capital. When we create intellectual property and we develop it in a way, it becomes the hallmark of intellectual capital. So knowledge capital is also known as intellectual capital, because when we talk about intellectual property rights, it is this word property is actually indicative of the asset which you have created. So we are having a right for a property which belongs to the intellect. So this right of a property belongs to the intellect, or what you call as the knowledge. So the question of intellectual property rights, it becomes very much significant only when there is emphasis on intellectual property creation and its development, or you can say there is a natural inheritance of the intellectual property, as in case of indigenous knowledge, whatever, like we can see that for Indian ethos in management, it is actually the indigenous knowledge which we are finding as a part of natural inheritance, that we are inheriting it from our forefathers, from our parents, from our grandparents, from our teachers, from our peer members, from our colleagues. So we are actually gaining, we are inheriting the intellectual property in case of indigenous knowledge. Next one is social capital, which is the fourth one. Some people think, what is social capital? How can you call a capital to be a social capital? So we need to first understand what exactly it is. It is indicated by the harmony in the society and organizations, how congenial people feel living together in a society, how safe they are finding themselves while living in a society. So the social capital is indicated by the harmony in the society and business organizations, quality of interpersonal relationships which they are maintaining, the social networking which they are having, intra-community and inter-community relationships which they are sharing, what are the ethical standards which they follow. And remember, this is applicable at both the levels, either it is of society or nation, or it is at the level of business enterprise or any business organization. So social capital is it can be counted, it can be calculated, it can be felt by understanding the kind of relationship your employees share with each other. What are the inter and intra community relationships, the kind of ethical standards they follow, whether they are following ethical standards or they give a damn to it, they don't follow any ethical standards. So if people in a given society or even in a business organization, they don't follow the ethical standards, then of course the future of that organization or that society is not be very sustainable. That is not going to be sustainable. They can't sustain for long, because what we need to be sustainable is the harmony in the society and the organization. So if there is a good quality of interpersonal relationship among employees or among residents in a country, then of course they are going to have that sustainability into their society as well as the organization. The best example of it is the recent problem which is going on in a country. I won't name that country, but you can feel that there is no harmony in the society, and people who are living, they don't have faith in the government. So they are trying to overpower those who are government, and they are trying to actually capture all the power centers. So can they sustain? No. Even later on, they had great remorse on what they did, because eventually what is happening, the country is not going to survive. So social capital is very much important, be it organization or be it the corporate, and be it a nation. The last one, which is the fifth one, is spiritual capital. It depends on the spiritual foundation of a specific nation or organization. That what are the spiritual foundations you have? When Max Weber proposed his well-known theory of Protestant ethics and spirit of capitalism, he had a very, I would say, very narrow definition of the concept of development as well as concept of capital. He could not look beyond money. He could not think of having different types of capital. He could not think of calling social the capital as a social capital. So after Weber, when McClellan proposed his theory of achievement motivation, he also had a narrow view of the concept of achieving societies. That how do we define societies which are achievers? So they actually they try to define in their own way the way the theory of achievement motivation works, the way Protestant ethics and spirit of capitalism works. But somehow they were actually the way which they resorted to was having a very narrow definition. They were looking at this idea from a very narrow perspective. It was not having that wider perspective which Indian ethos in management offers. And now it is increasingly realized by people from academia and industry that human capital is at the core of any development which is supported by by other forms of capital. So human capital is always at the core, because it actually encourages other capitals to get activated. It is only the human capital which makes other capitals dynamic, otherwise they are static in nature. So at the core of any development, you need human capital, but yes, of course, with the support of other forms of capital. This is called the holistic view or holistic approach of looking at organizational development and management. So when we look at the ODM, the total capital approach is actually the new reality, or I would say it is actually a reality which is there for long. But if you wish to have sustainable organization, sustainable society, sustainable nation, then for that you need to broaden your perspective, broaden your idea, broaden your thinking, because without support of other forms of capital, even human capital cannot do anything. So India as a nation and Indians as individuals, I can say they have become great contributors to the human capital reserves of the world. I told you previously while discussing about the human capital, I told you that the way Indians, they have contributed in the form of human capital reserve. We talk about medical tourism in India, that people are coming to our country for their own for their remedies, for curing their disease. So human capital reserve of the world is being contributed significantly by our people. I am not saying that other countries are not doing so, but since we are talking about Indian ethos in management, we are giving a perspective of what India as a nation is doing. So this entire practice, it leads us to a new proposition that can be referred as human capital and spirit of development. And in the view of global age, this proposition provides a better explanation of any nation's development, and it takes us beyond what Weber and McClellan propagated in their theory, what they wrote in their theory. We are actually going beyond those theories and looking at this entire ODM from a holistic perspective. So what we need alignment. and we understand there is a study by Kaplan and Norton in 2004. It suggested that the need for aligning intangible assets to enterprise strategy is actually very much significant. I told you that money is basically a tangible capital. Your physical capital can be there, that is tangible, but what about the intangible capitals? So we have to align those intangible assets or capital to our enterprise strategy, then only we can succeed. And their focus is on human capital, information capital, that is called knowledge capital, and organization capital. Imagine the new names of capital being given here. Organization capital, organization has a capital, information has a capital. We have number of examples where the business enterprises used to say that we only need our human resources, we will re-establish ourselves. If everything is gone, then too we can re-establish with our human capital. So they define organization capital as the ability of that business enterprise or organization to mobilize and sustain the process of changes required to execute this executive strategy. So your ability as a company to mobilize and sustain the process of change which you require to executive strategy, that is called the organization capital. And this definition actually holds the essence of entrepreneurial spirit and managerial capacity of any business enterprise. And the concept of various forms of capital is also applicable at the level of business enterprises as well, because we all know that human beings are critical to the success of any organization. Human capital, it has also been viewed in terms of HRD. We call it human resource development initiatives, and in addition to HRD we need to focus on HSD now, human and social development. And when we say social development, social capital automatically comes into the picture. We have HQD, human quality development, wherein we are finding quality to be at the central point. So we are moving ahead of HRD and we are reaching to the new definitions of HSD, that is human and social development, and then HQD, that is human quality development. So this concept of HSD, it captures the essence of social capital, and the concept of HQD, it actually holds the essence of spiritual capital of any business enterprise or even for the nation. So we are actually moving from only resources, considering human to be a resource for development, we are finding human to be a social capital. We talk about the social capital, we talk about the quality of human capital which is with us. So knowledge capital, it has also acquired a new importance, new significance in the form of information capital, or what you call as intellectual property rights. So in our framework, the framework which is being proposed by the propagators of Indian ethos in management, and to be very specific, the author who has given this idea or this framework, the focus is on 5 forms of capital. That is why we had a discussion on 5 forms of capital, because there can be n number of classifications of capital. It can be 7 from your perspective, it can be 9 from my perspective, but here the author has taken the 5 forms of capital as a founding concept for the ODM, that is organizational development and management. So after having discussed these 5 types of capital, now we should talk about the way we are heading towards the VSP model. What is ERPS framework for ODM? In the ERPS framework, E, R, P and S, these are the 4 alphabets, and E stands for efficiency, effectiveness and efficacy. So each word is representing a group of words. Like E stands for not only efficiency but also effectiveness and efficacy. If you look at R stands for reinventing, restructuring and re-engineering. So we are looking at reinventing the business organization, we are looking at restructuring the entire process, we are there to re-engineer the processes, weeding out, leaving behind the processes which are redundant. And P stands for purpose, process and people. And S stands for another group of words, that is strategy, structures and systems, which is suggested by Sumantra Ghoshal. Sumantra Ghoshal is basically a contributor to this idea of ERPS framework for ODM. When I was going through the literature available on, academic literature available on this topic, I could find this ERPS framework to be very interesting, because it is very comprehensive. It leaves nothing, I would say. Because when we talk about E, it includes efficiency, effectiveness, efficacy, it includes reinventing, restructuring and reengineering, it includes strategy, structures and systems, it does include purpose, process and people. So starting from top management to the operating level of management, whatever is required, this ERPS framework actually includes. It is the most inclusive framework, I would say, which I could find till date on the topic of ODM. So this model is basically an extension of SP model of change management, wherein 3S, strategy, structures and system, and 3 P's, purpose, process and people, they are integrated. So when you are integrating S and P, you call it SP model, because in 3S model we were looking at strategy, structure and systems, and in 3 P's we were looking at purpose, process and people. Now we are integrating them, that's why we call it SP model. This model is useful from the perspective of 5 forms of capital, because it draws our attention to the areas where the managerial action is very much needed. Because if you wish to enhance the total capital of your company or organization, then you need to combine them together, you need to integrate them, and for that this SP model is very much significant. There is a researcher named Hari Gopal. In 2001 he wrote that while 3S model is concerned with allocating resources, assigning responsibilities and controlling their effective management in the context of design, structure and systems, if we look at 3P model, it is concerned with the process and the people, creating a learning environment, making people, helping people to take initiative, innovate and cooperate to achieve the desired purpose. But here when we combine them together in SP model, all these are combined together to take advantage of both the frameworks, and that is why this ERPS framework is regarded as the most comprehensive and most inclusive framework of ODM. So with this, my dear learners, I tried to give you a brief introduction of what is there into ERPS framework for ODM. We shall continue our discussion on the topic in the next lecture of mine. Thank you so much.